Hi friends, welcome to our YouTube channel Odontology Study of Teeth. Today we are going to see about maxillary artery in detail. This is one of your important 10 mark question and it can also be asked as 5 mark also in your first year anatomy subject. So please concentrate in this question. Okay, let's see maxillary artery in detail. Maxillary artery is a branch of external carotid artery. External carotid artery. It is a longest terminal branch. Okay. It is a longest terminal branch of external carotid artery. Okay. Now let's see how this maxillary artery originates and gives the distribution. Okay. To know the maxillary artery in detail, you should know what is lateral pterygoid muscle. Let's see how this lateral pterygoid originate. Okay, the structure I am pointing is your pterygoid plate. Okay, this is your pterygoid plate. This lateral pterygoid muscle is one of the content of the infratemporal fossa. Okay, this lateral pterygoid can be explained when we are dealing with the infratemporal fossa and its contents. Okay, okay. To know about the lateral pterygoid, first of all we should know it has two heads. Okay, this lateral pterygoid muscles has two heads. One is your upper head and another one is your lower head. Okay, this upper head arises from the infratemporal fossa and connects to the neck of the mandible. Okay, here I have drawn only the lower head as it arises from the lateral surface of the pterygoid plate, so it is named as lateral pterygoid muscles, and it gets inserted into the neck of the mandible. Okay, it inserted into the neck of the mandible. To know about the distributions of the maxillary artery, you should know the distributions can be based on the lateral pterygoid muscles only. Okay, so we are dividing this entire maxillary artery into three different parts based on the presence of lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, but before that, let's see how it's originate. This maxillary artery arises behind the neck of the mandible. See, behind the neck of the mandible and runs forward horizontally. Forwards and horizontally. Horizontal means just parallel to the floor. Okay. So it arises behind the neck of the mandible and runs horizontally and forward. It's coming forward, right? So it runs horizontally and forward and reaches the lower border. This is your lateral pterygoid muscle, right? This is your lower border and the upper one is your this is your upper head. Here your upper heads will come, that is from the infratemporal fossa to the neck of the mandible. This is your upper head. Here I have drawn only the lower head. So this maxillary artery arises behind the neck of the mandible and runs horizontally and forward and reaches the lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, this is your lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. From there it runs upwards and forwards and reaches the upper border of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, see, upper border of the lateral pterygoid muscle. This is your upper border. Okay, so from here, from the upper border of the lateral pterygoid muscles, it reaches the pterygopalatine fossa through pterygomaxillary fissure. Finally it reaches the pterygopalatine fossa through pterygomaxillary fissure. Okay, so this is how your maxillary artery originates. This entire maxillary artery distributions is starts from the behind the neck of the mandible and it reaches the pterygopalatine fossa through pterygomaxillary fissure. Through this way only your maxillary arteries originates and gives its distribution. Okay, We are dividing this entire maxillary artery into three parts. It depends upon the structures or surrounding structures around the area. Okay. So we are dividing it into three different parts. Okay. Your first part is your mandibular part. Okay. So this mandibular part is the maxillary artery arising behind the neck of the mandible to the lower border of the lateral pterygoid muscle. From there it reaches the upper border of the lateral pterygoid muscles upwards and down, upwards and forwards, and from there it reaches the pterygopalatine fossa, right? So as the distribution itself, it is clearly giving us that it is divided into three. Okay. See, this is your pterygopalatine fossa through pterygomaxillary fissure. From here to pterygopalatine fossa, as I said earlier, it is getting divided into three types based on the surrounding structure. Okay, let us divide this into three. Part 1, part 2 and part 3. Okay, let us mark the part 1 first, that is your mandibular part. Okay, from the neck of the mandible to the lower head, lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid, till that, see, I am drawing the line, drawing a line. Okay, this is your first part. This is your part 1. It is also called as mandibular part. This is your mandibular part. Okay. Next, from the lower border to the upper border, till your upper border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid, it's your part 2. It is also called as pterygoid part. Okay, pterygoid part. And your third part is your till the pterygopalatine fossa. That part is your third part, and it is also called as pterygopalatine part. So if the first part is your mandibular part, it runs from the behind the neck of the mandible to the lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Till that is your part 1, that is your mandibular part. From the lower head of the lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle to the upper border of the, it runs upwards and forward, right? So till the upper border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle is your part 2. Okay, this is your upper border. Okay, this entire is your lower head. Till that I have drawn, right? So till here is your part 2. From that upper border to the pterygopalatine fossa is your part 3 or pterygopalatine part, here till here. Okay, so mandibular part, pterygoid part and pterygopalatine part. Okay, so it arises behind the neck of the mandible and reaches the lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. From that it gives part 1, and from the lower head of the lateral pterygoid to the upper border it gives part 2, that is pterygoid part. This is your lower head only. I have drawn only lower head. This is your upper head. It comes from the infratemporal fossa and inserted into the neck of the mandible. Okay, I have drawn only the lower head. This is your lower border and this is your upper border. Till upper border your second part. Okay, that is your pterygoid part, and from there till the pterygopalatine fossa you have your third part, that is pterygopalatine part. Okay, I hope you have understand the how it arises and how it gets divided. Okay, let's see each part, how it gives, how many branches it gives and how it goes, how it supplies and all. We will see in detail from starting from the first part. Before entering into the distribution and branches, you should know the maxillary artery has a wide territory of distribution. It supplies your upper and lower jaws, muscles of temporal region and infratemporal fossa, nose, paranasal sinuses, palate, roof of pharynx, external and middle ear, pharyngotympanic tube and dura mater. All these structures or supplied by your entire maxillary artery and its branches. Okay, we'll see each and every branch in detail and how it supplies, how it goes and all in detail. Okay, fine. Your first parts hence here, right? See here, from here your first parts gets over. It gives 5 branches. That is your, see, this is your first small branch I have drawn here, right? This is your first branch, that is your deep auricular artery. Deep auricular artery, it runs upwards. Okay, deep auricular artery, as the name indicates, it supplies the it runs upwards and backwards and enter into the external acoustic meatus by piercing its floor and gives supply to the skin of external acoustic meatus and outer surface of tympanic membrane. Okay, here is your ear, right? External acoustic meatus, you can see that. Okay, so it supplies the region. Here is your external acoustic meatus, and behind that you have your tympanic membrane and tympanic cavity and all, right? So as the name indicates, this is supplies your deep auricular region. Okay, so it is deep auricular artery. Here is your tympanic membrane will come, and second one is your anterior tympanic artery. As the name indicates, it supplies the tympanic membrane. Okay, and first is one your deep auricular, which supplies the external acoustic meatus and skin of that too, and second one is your anterior tympanic artery. Keep reminding, like the ear region will contains that tympanic membrane, tympanic cavity, right? So remind like this. And your third point is your third branch is your middle meningeal artery. This middle meningeal artery itself can be asked as your viva question and your 5 mark also, because it has a clear distribution from here. So I'll take it in next class. Okay, this is your middle meningeal artery. The artery which is arising parallelly to the middle meningeal artery is accessory middle meningeal artery. See, this is your middle meningeal artery and this is your accessory middle meningeal artery. This middle meningeal artery itself gets divided into 2 branches, that is a frontal branch and parietal branch, that is anterior and posterior branches. I'll explain in next class. So from behind the neck of the mandible to the lower border of the lower right of lateral pterygoid muscle is your first part, that is mandibular part. It gives us 5 branches. Okay, this 5th branch is your inferior alveolar artery. This is your inferior alveolar artery. Okay, as we saw in mandibular nerve, the same thing, this inferior alveolar artery also getting divided into 2 in the mandibular foramen, and it gives 2 branches, that is mylohyoid artery, and the other branch will give terminal branches like lingual branch, buccal branch, incisive branch and mental artery. So this is your inferior alveolar artery, it getting divided, and this is your mandibular foramen. This lower, this lower artery is called mylohyoid artery, and these other parts will give branches to, like this is your incisive branch and this is your mental foramen, so it is your mental branch or mental artery. Okay, and this is your lingual branch. Okay, this is how this inferior alveolar artery gets divided and gives branch to mylohyoid artery, and the other branch gives lingual branch, mental branch and incisive branch. So it has 5 branches entire. The first part, one is your deep auricular, anterior tympanic, middle meningeal, accessory meningeal, inferior alveolar artery. Okay, here is your, till that this first part gets over, let's enter into the branches of the second part. Okay, Second part is also called as pterygoid part, and we have already seen in mandibular nerve class that the anterior anterior terminal branch gives four branches, like the same thing. That is, first one is here is your branch. In mandibular nerve also you will have that mesenteric branch, nerve to medial and lateral pterygoid, deep temporal, the same thing. The second one is your deep temporal artery. First is your mesenteric artery, and second one is your deep temporal artery, which supplies the deep temporal region. Mesenteric muscle supplies. Okay, and this is your buccal artery, which supplies the buccinator muscle or buccinator region. Okay, buccal artery. Same thing in your mandibular nerve anterior section branches now, the same branches the second part of the maxillary artery also gives, but this is artery, that is nerve. Okay, so first is your mesenteric, second is your deep temporal, and third is your buccal. I have not drawn that artery to medial and lateral pterygoid because it is deep. Okay, so I didn't draw it, but one more branch is there, that is your artery to pterygoid region, that is medial and lateral pterygoid muscles, which supplies. Okay, and this is your buccal artery, which supplies the buccinator region. Okay, this is how the second part and its branches supplies the particular regions. Okay, the first part has 5 branches and second part has 4 branches, and the last part, I mean the third part, are pterygopalatine part. Okay, we are going to see that in detail. So from the upper border of the lateral pterygoid muscle, lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle, to the pterygopalatine fossa, the third parts are the third part is located. So here to here. See, let us go from down to up. Okay, in the third part, pterygopalatine part. See, your first branch is this one, that is your greater palatine artery. You have seen, right, greater palatine artery in upper posterior tooth extraction and all, you will give GP in palatal region. Okay, GP block, right, greater palatine. Okay, so same thing. Okay, but here it is greater palatine artery. It supplies the posterior region tooth and it ascends forwards, and it comes forward and reaches the incisive foramen. From there it enters into the nasal cavity. This is how it goes. Okay, so this greater palatine branch comes out through the greater palatine foramen and reaches the incisive foramen, comes out through the incisive foramen and reaches the nasal area. Okay, from this greater palatine foramen you have a very small terminal branch. Okay, I have drawn here. See, from the greater palatine branch this small terminal branch I have drawn, right? So this is your lesser palatine branch or lesser palatine artery. From the greater palatine branch only small terminal branch is coming, that is your lesser palatine branch. Okay, this is your first branch of third part, that is pterygopalatine part of maxillary artery. Next, it both supplies the posterior teeth in the maxillary region. Okay, second is your this one, second branch is this one. This is your second branch and it is posterior superior alveolar artery. This is also same thing. PSA will give PSA block in upper maxillary posterior tooth extraction, right? Same thing, that is nerve, PSA nerve block. Here it is artery, same, you remind like that. So that's why only I am comparing it with the nerve. So please remind like that. This is your posterior superior alveolar artery, which supplies the roots of the, or it nourishes the upper posterior teeth, that means molar. And from here the next branch is your ASA, that is, see, ASA is a branch that comes from the infraorbital artery. This is your infraorbital artery which comes out through the infraorbital foramen, and it gives two branches, that is ASA and MSA. This is your infraorbital foramen. See, so infraorbital foramen. From there it gives us ASA and one more part, that is MSA. That is, ASA means anterior superior alveolar artery and MSA is your middle superior alveolar artery. See, now this is your anterior superior alveolar artery. The above written is your infraorbital foramen. From there its infraorbital artery is coming. It gives two branches, that is ASA and MSA, anterior superior alveolar artery and middle superior alveolar artery. And the other branch, this is your sphenopalatine branch. That is one of the biggest branch and important branch too. We'll see it in, first of all we'll finish the terminal branches. Okay, this here one branch is there now, that is your pharyngeal artery. Okay, this is your pharyngeal artery which supplies the nasopharynx. Okay, the next one is your artery to pterygoid canal. You have your pterygoid canal right there. So the artery to the pterygoid canal, pterygopalatine fossa only, right through the maxillary fissure only it reaches the pterygopalatine fossa. So you keep remember like that. That is artery to pterygopalatine canal. And the last one is your sphenopalatine artery. It comes out through the sphenopalatine foramen. This is your sphenopalatine artery. The sphenopalatine artery also divided into two branches after coming out to the sphenopalatine foramen. See, here is your sphenopalatine artery. The sphenopalatine artery comes out through the sphenopalatine foramen. This is the third branch of maxillary artery. It enters the nasal cavity in the posterior part of the superior meatus through pterygopalatine foramen. Here it gets divided into two parts, that is your posterior lateral nasal and posterior septal branches. See in detail, this maxillary artery is a branch of external carotid artery which is the largest terminal branch. See, let's see how it originates. It arises behind the neck of the mandible and runs forward and horizontally and reaches the lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. From there it reaches the upper border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscles. It gives the second part, that is your pterygoid part, and from there from the upper border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle to the pterygopalatine fossa through the maxillary fissure gives the third part. So you have three parts, that is your first one is your mandibular part, second one is your pterygoid part, and third one is your pterygomaxillary part. The first part has 5 branches. Okay, see, so the first part arises lies between the neck of the mandible to the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. From there to lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle, it's your first part, mandibular part. From the lower border of the lower head of the lateral pterygoid muscle to the upper border of the upper head of the lateral pterygoid muscle, you have second part, that is pterygoid part. From the upper border to the pterygopalatine fossa, you have the your third part. This first part contains mandibular structures and second part is in the pterygoid region and third part is your pterygopalatine region. First part, you have 5 branches. See, the first part is your, see, this is your external acoustic meatus, and behind that you will have your tympanic cavity, tympanic membrane and all. Okay, see, so first part is your deep auricular artery which supplies the auricular region and the anterior tympanic artery. Third one is middle meningeal artery. It has further divided into two, that is anterior and posterior. And second, the parallel one which is running around the middle meningeal artery is accessory meningeal artery. The fifth one is your inferior alveolar artery, divided into two, that is myloid artery, and gives us terminal branches to lingual artery, incisive artery, and mental branch. Mental branch is coming out through the mental foramen. This is your incisive branch, this is your mental branch, and you have your second part. In second part you have the first branch, that is, as the name indicates, mesenteric branch which supplies the mesenteric muscle, and your second branch, that is your deep temporal branch which supplies the area region above the ear and earlobe region, that is your deep temporal, which is deep temporal region. And Your third branch is your buccal artery. See, this is your buccal artery, which supplies the buccal region or buccinator region or buccinator muscle. Okay, the fourth I didn't draw that. That is artery to the pterygoid region, that is that supplies medial and lateral pterygoid muscle. This is your lower head, so I didn't draw that. So from there third part starts, that is from the upper head of the lower pterygoid muscle to the spinopalatine foramen. This is your first branch, that is greater palatine branch, which supplies the greater palatine region, and the terminal branch is lesser palatine, and other one is your PSA, posterior superior alveolar artery, which supplies the posterior teeth, and infraorbital artery, which gives two sub branches, that is ASA and MSA, anterior superior alveolar artery and middle superior alveolar artery, and other branch is pharyngeal branch, which supplies the nasopharynx region, artery to pterygoid canal, and last one is your spinopalatine artery, which divides into two and gives posterior lateral nasal and posterior septal branch. Posterior lateral nasal and posterior septal branches. Okay, this is how this maxillary artery originates and gives distribution and supplies the areas. Okay, so hope you have liked the video. If you like the video, please click the like button or give a thumbs up. If you want any other topic in detail, please pin in the comment box. If you have any doubts also, you please pin in the comment box. Then I hope you like the video. Please subscribe, share and comment. Thanks for watching.